problems that occur when you rebury bones. The Native American tribes, the modern tribes, should be allowed to...
So I had the opportunity to speak with your husband, Nick, recently, which was an awesome podcast. Great guy. You chose a good dude for your husband. But he was telling me a bit about what's been happening to you. And then I looked more. We only talked about the most recent thing, but then I looked more at some of the stuff with your former university and things that went on there. They have really put you over the ringer in the last few years.
Yeah. Basically, it started about 3 years ago. I published a book called Repatriation and Erasing the Past. And what this book was about was the problems that occur when you rebury bones. Basically, Native American bones that are used to study how to reconstruct the past and what people's lives were like in the past, but also to understand bone biology, to understand ways to practice ways to or improve ways on how to age and sex individuals that can then be cross-applied to forensics. And I basically take the position that we should not rebury remains.
That would be a good start for your studies.
And this is very controversial because there are laws that are for the repatriation and reburial of remains. The major one is the Native American Graves Protection and Repatriation Act, NAGPRA. But there are also like state laws like CalNAGPRA. And the book that I wrote and then got published, it was published in 2020. We timed it for the 30-year anniversary of NAGPRA. So basically, I'm the co-author. I'm the lead author, but the co-author, my co-author, James W. Springer, is actually a retired attorney. So he's an anthropologist, but also a retired attorney. And so he covered in the book the legal aspects of it, the difficult part, and I just did the fun part, the bone stuff, right? And this book came out, and, most academic books don't cause any controversy. Actually, I would say that most academic books are not read by even other academics. But the book came out in September, and then or maybe October, so late September, early October, and by December, we had heard from our publishers, with University of Florida Press, that they were in crisis mode because there was a campaign to get the book depublished, otherwise known as censoring.
Yeah,
right?
literally.
And this was, they wrote in, the academics who wanted the book not to be published wrote an open letter against the book, calling it racist and saying that we had Victorian perspective and those kinds of things, anti-indigenous.
What do you mean by Victorian perspective?
Well, basically, perspective from the 1800s.
Yeah.
So I would consider myself then in good company since that was when Darwin was around.
Yeah.
But so basically just saying that we're antiquated in one way and that we didn't, that we were, I think the most scandalous thing to say in some ways is that they were calling us racists. And I couldn't quite understand that at the beginning because the book is not about race differences. It's about Native American skeletal remains and how those should not be buried.
Yeah.
And I actually take the line that any skeletal collection that has been excavated and is curated, so is preserved for research or teaching, should not be reburied, whether it's Native American, whether it's European. It's not for me to say that, I'm not saying that, these groups should be reburied, but another group shouldn't. I think that none of the groups should be.
Hey guys, from January 1st through January 24th, over 60% of those of you who have watched this channel are not subscribed. If you could take 2 seconds and smash that subscribe button, it is a huge, huge help to us in the algorithm, and it allows us to get great guests like this to come in from out of town to be here so that we can put out podcasts which, by the way, we want to put out a lot more podcasts and a lot more content. And in order to do that, I have to up the budget, and I can't up the budget where we are right now financially. So seriously, if you take 2 seconds to hit that subscribe button, it's a huge help, and I appreciate all of you who have done that. And also like the video.
And so the open letter, it's kind of funny because when this started happening, I think my publishers were they were about to pull the book. I'm pretty sure they were about to pull the book.
Who was your publisher?
A University of Florida Press. The book was peer-reviewed. So what that means is that there were anthropologists who read the book, anthropologists, archaeologists who read the book and approved it. Now, we had to make changes like you always have to make, but there was no, oh my goodness, you can't publish this type of moment during that process.
I don't understand why. I mean, as an archaeologist, the whole point is to dig up old things and study them. What were they claiming is the value of reburying the remains other than, oh, we want to give it back to those people because we took their land? Or was that it?
I think that's part of it. And I would say that this is a false equivalency for a couple reasons. So part of it is, the Native American tribes, the modern tribes, should be allowed to claim the skeletal remains and sacred artifacts like grave goods and rebury them or study them. But, they don't have to rebury them. They could study them as well. And that because there's an ancestral link that they should get to make that decision. Now, the links are very, very tenuous in a sense. Most Native American tribes are not clearly linked to any past collections that we hold. The ones where there was a clear link were basically repatriated and reburied very early on in the process. Basically, where there was clear historic documents or so forth, that those decisions had been made 30 years ago and done. So what's left now is the collections that are pre-contact, where we don't have a good indicator of who they were ancestral to.
What years approximately do you think they're from?
Well, like the collection that I looked at in San Jose, and so San Jose State University has one of the largest skeletal collections of a single site west of the Mississippi. And that collection is all pre-contact, so these individuals had never come into contact with Europeans. And it ranges from about 3,500 years old to about 300 years old. So, so it's a large range, right? So it's a collection the site had amassed the remains for many generations, right? It's not just one time period.
So it went all the way back to 3,500 years ago.
Yeah,
though. That's longer than I usually hear in America.
The oldest skeletal remains in the U.S. date from about 9,000 years, 9,000, 10,000 years. So like Kennewick Man is one of the most famous of what we call our Paleo-Indians, which are Native American remains or indigenous remains that date 7,500 or older.
Whoa.
And yet it seems that it doesn't matter how old these remains are, there's always a modern tribe who thinks that they are connected. And that's what happened with Kennewick Man. And so some people may say, well, you know what, why don't you do DNA studies? But DNA studies will not tell you whether the skeletal remains belong to any specific tribes. It will only tell you what kind of overall general population it would belong to, like Native American versus Siberian, right?
Really? I didn't know that.
And tribes themselves don't use DNA to determine who's in the tribe. They use what they call blood quantum a lot of times, which has nothing to do with blood, but rather is tracing family trees, right?
How reliable is that?
I think it's pretty reliable for recent
Right.
for a few generations. But I mean, there's lots of what we call pretendians, right? People who pretend to be Indians and they're not, and they get outed all the time.
Yeah.
One of the most famous, of course, is Sachin
Little Feather.
Little Feather,
Yeah.
right?